You take classes or something?
No, I just draw. A lot.
Not bad. Pretty dope, actually. Is it like a comic book or something?
No, it's a graphic novel about a detective who's investigating his own murder.
Cool. So how does it end?
I don't know yet.
You don't know? It's your story. How do you not know the ending?
You can't know the ending until you get there.
And that is a clip from The Waterman, which will be available on Netflix from July 9th. Stars David Oyelowo, who's also directed this movie. I'm delighted to say he joins us. I think we established last time we spoke, you're from Tarzana or somewhere strange, right?
I'm not from Tarzana.
No. But you're in Tarzana.
I'm in Tarzana and I live in Tarzana. Yes.
Because after we spoke, I remembered that Bob Hoskins used to live down the road. And I was thinking, well, we need to rename this part of London, Hoskinsia or something.
Oh, I like that. I'd much rather live in Hoskinsia than Tarzan. Tarzana.
I'm not sure you would. Anyway, it's very nice to speak to you. How are you, David? And how are things over there?
Well, I'm great. Things are beginning to open up here, so it's really wonderful to. I don't know about you. There were times in the pandemic where it literally felt like there are certain things that are just never going to return. I'm going to be talking to my grandchildren about what it was like to go to a restaurant, and so the fact that some of those things, not all of them, but some of them are returning, it gives me a lot of hope.
Well, hopefully going back to the cinema is one of them. Though, as I mentioned, this is a Netflix release, which people will see, which I want to ask you about in just a moment. But take us into the story of The Waterman. You star in the movie, you direct the movie as well. Just introduce us to the characters and to this story.
Yeah, so the Waterman as a film is about a family, the Boone family, who recently moved to a small town in Oregon, a fictional town called Pine Mills, and there is this myth of the Waterman in this town, and the Waterman supposedly has the gift of immortality, and we soon find out that the mother within this family is very ill, and her son is desperate to save her, and so he goes on a hunt, partnering with this 13-year-old girl he's befriended to find the Waterman in order to save his mother.
And what is it about this story that has put you in the director's chair?
I gravitated towards this because it really reminded me of films I had loved growing up, E.T. being a formative one, but The Goonies being another never-ending story, Willow, Stand By Me, The Gremlins. These were all films that, largely had kids as the protagonists, but in a very three-dimensional way, where the emotional intelligence of those kids was very much being respected and platformed, and there was this mixture of reality and fantasy. You saw kids going through real issues, but how they cope with their imagination. Now being a father of four, I have delighted in sharing some of those films from the 80s with my kids and wondered why we weren't making them anymore. And so when The Waterman came my way, or I should say I sought it out because I was looking to make something like this, I was very keen to see it come to fruition, partly because of how much I'd loved those films growing up.
It has a feeling of a myth, which is generally, people in Oregon will have spoken about the Waterman for many years. I don't think that's true. The story came from, tell us where the story came from, because it feels like an ancient tale.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about it. It felt like it was rooted in some kind of reality, even though it's folklore and therefore fantasy. But I grew up, part of my youth was in Nigeria. We have so much myth and folklore and the kind of stories that are meant to be cautionary tales. Don't go down that alley because there is a witch there who will, spank you if whatever, and And that becomes part of your development as a child. It's part of the mechanism you use to understand where the boundaries are, what things are big, what things are small. And so yes, it's a made up mythology. Emma Nadell, who wrote the script, it's based on her childhood growing up on a dairy farm in Montana as a kid. And so, but it sort of has this universal thing that crosses cultures around how myth intersects with the reality of kids.
I was listening to a podcast today, actually, the Script Notes podcast, which is for script writers. John August and Craig Mazin do it, and this is a conversation from 5 years ago. But they're talking about the default setting in the movie industry for stories to default to male and to default to white, and I wondered if one of the attractions of directing a story yourself is that you can actually get your hands on this and do something about it.
100%. I mean, this script was indicative of that. It was white, and the protagonist was indeed male when it came my way. It was a white family in Montana. And, one of the reasons I was so keen to come on board was I knew I wanted to play the father. I knew that in so doing that would change the demographic of the family at the center of the narrative. And I actually, to speak to your point even further, even though it was written by a woman, the two protagonists were both male. It was Gunnar and Joseph were the kids who went on an adventure. And I have 3 boys and a girl, and I wanted her experience and who she is to be reflected in the story. So I made Joseph Joe, and I made her a girl, because having been marginalized myself, I understand that it's not always racism. Sometimes it's just ignorance or habit. And so therefore, those who are mindful, those who have intention behind the things they're doing, are the ones who can come along and go, no, this is the default setting. Rethink how you do these things. And so, no better way to do that than to do it yourself.
Tell us about your 2 protagonists then, because by the way, Gunnar Boone is the greatest name for a kid. Every kid would love. I mean, that's what a gift. Who doesn't want to play someone called Gunnar Boone? Anyway, but tell me about Gunnar and Joe, because obviously they're handling an awful lot of this story for you. You need to get the right people.
You need to get the right people, and boy, it's a needle in a haystack when you're not just trying to find one great child actor, but 2. And we were just so fortunate. I mean, Lonnie Chavis in particular, who literally has to put this movie on his back and run with it, was such a tough find. And he's partly why I came to direct this film, because we had a director. My intent was not originally to direct it, but we had Lonnie. We had money to make it. We had a start date, and we knew that we had caught him in the perfect moment in his infancy. Well, not infancy, but his childhood to play this. He was just young enough that you understand why he believes so wholeheartedly in the Waterman, but just old enough that he can get his head around the fact that his mum is ill and something needs to be done. And that age was like, that sweet spot was 11. When we lost our director, we knew that if we didn't go right then and there, he was going to age out of the role. Like, there was a big difference between 11 and 12. I mean, you hear Lonnie now, 2 years after we made the film, his voice is deeper than mine. So, and that's partly why I jumped into the director's chair, having lost our director. But yeah, you're looking for an emotional intelligence, the likes of which is hard to find in that age group. But also you're looking for a technical proficiency. And he's been doing this show called This Is Us.
Yes.
Maya Miller, people will know her from War of the Planet of the Apes. They are experienced actors at this point. But the other great thing they have is that they are not so technically proficient, so professional that you don't believe them as the ages they're playing, which is also that very tricky balance. And when it comes to Lonnie, he has this special gift of being able to say as much when he's not speaking as when he is. And that is quintessential brilliant movie acting. And he has that at the tender age that he is.
You've worked with some great directors, David. What kind of a director are you, do you think? You're sitting there in that chair. You're bossing the show. What kind of a director do you think you are?
Wow, good question. I haven't been asked that question before. What kind of director do I think I am? Well, I feel like I feel I direct the way I like to be directed. And so my focus is very much obviously on performance, but really trying to create an environment where actors in particular can do their best work, because that's something I deeply appreciate when I'm acting in a film. But I also sought the advice of some great actor directors, people who have done it really impressively. Joel Edgerton being one, Nate Parker, Mel Gibson, Angelina Jolie are all people I consulted before I went into this. And I do think there is something specific by way of a quality from actors who are directing, which is their focus around the emotional terrain of the story. Sometimes I've worked with directors who are very good, but they don't have the vernacular for guiding an actor towards their best performance. And so that is something I like to think I bring to the table.
It's, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's a Netflix film. People will be able to see it very shortly. Is that where you thought its natural home would be, or do you look at it now and think, actually, it's going to have a long life there? If this is a family movie, capital F, capital M, this is the perfect place for it to be.
You just never know where a film is going to end up when you make it independently. Of course, your goal, your prayer, your wish is that at the end of the day, a lot of people are going to get to see it. Traditionally, that has, the ultimate for a film director is for it to be seen in a cinema. And so we made it with that in mind. Anyone who sees the film will see that attention has been made and paid to the cinematic scope and scale of the film. Wonderfully, it's had a theatrical release here in the States. And so people have experienced it that way. But we are in the middle of real change when it comes to the audience's habits. And I am a beneficiary of that. There is work I did 10 years ago that is having a resurgence and a bigger life on streaming platforms, because people can see it when they want, how they want, wherever they want. And that is not something that happens when it's premiering on terrestrial television or they missed it in the movie theater. So at the end of the day, I just love that something I've made is having so many different shots at reaching so many different kinds of audiences because of the sheer amount of choices there are out there for people to now watch film.
When you made Queen of Katwe, I remember speaking to you about Queen of Katwe, which is a fantastic film. And if I've got this right, David, this sort of story ties in with The Waterman, because there's a Netflix executive who you were working with on that movie, who was one of the reasons why this has ended up at Netflix. Have I got that right?
Wow, you are so good, or whoever does your research is so good. That's true. Oh, it's you. Well done. Well done. Gosh, that's the needle in a haystack. Yes, Tendo Ngenda, who was the reason Queen of Katwe got made at Disney, because he's of Ugandan descent and was at Disney at the time. He is now one of the heads at Netflix. And he and I have this shared belief when it comes to telling stories that have specificity, have representation, and can also appeal to a universal audience. And so he is one of those people in Hollywood who absolutely gets one of the big goals I have. We share it. And so when he saw the film, yeah, you're absolutely right. He has been instrumental in Netflix picking up the film. I'm very impressed.
Okay, well, I just love Queen of Katwe, and I want more people to watch it. And I just think it's interesting to draw a line from where you were there to where we are here. I have one more question, which is, I have a bone to pick with you, really. I feel as though in this movie, The Waterman, I feel as though you have a problem with country music. This is not the heart of the movie. This is not really what the movie is about. But there's an exchange at the table, which is a quite unnecessary assault on Country music. What's your problem, Mr. Oyelowo?
Oh dear, I've clearly touched a nerve here, Simon. Yes, you're right. I'm not the biggest fan of country music, and that was not in the original script. So you spotted that. Yeah, that's my own prejudice. But listen, Simon, that's what happens when you get to be the director.
Exactly.
You can say what you want.
So you get to the bit, oh, here's the director's message. And with this movie, it's country music's not all it's cracked up to be. There are other themes. There are other big themes. David, after this, what do we see you in next, sir?
Oh gosh, I've got a few exciting things coming. I just wrapped a limited series for the BBC called The Girl Before, that myself, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, Jessica Plummer, and Ben Hardy star in. Psychological thriller that should be coming out at the end of this year on the BBC, BBC One. I've done it's currently called Untitled Murder Mystery. It's a sort of comedic Agatha Christie-esque murder mystery that I did with Sam Rockwell, Saoirse Ronan, Adrian Brody, really great cast. That'll be surfacing soon. And a film called Solitary, in which I play a guy who's had to endure solitary confinement for 7 years. Oh. And that film will be coming out at some point soon. So yeah, few things.
Busy man. Busy man.
Yeah, I try to be.
David Oyelowo, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thanks for having me, and I'm going to go and listen to some country music now.